The Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now, 865-243-TALK. That's 243-8255. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome back again this week. This is the Patrick Riggins Show. Yes, some people are writing off America, but here we are not. Personally, I think by working together, we can take back this country from the greedy bureaucrats that have taken it over. Sure, there are some problems with corporate money sloshing around Washington, but, it wouldn't be there if, one, there wasn't too much power concentrated in government, and B, there wasn't anyone there taking the money. But first things first, I want to recognize our flagship radio station here in Knoxville, Tennessee, carrying the fastest growing radio show on the dial, the Patrick Riggins Show. The radio station carrying that is 100.3 WNOX. You can tune us in right here at 100.3 megahertz or megacycles if you're an old timer, every Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. If you'd rather get your weekly fill of logic and reason over the internet, you can bring up the station website at www.wnoxfm.com. There you can watch and listen to this radio show via our in-studio webcam. That address again is wnoxfm.com. Sitting here beside me, well, actually he's standing here, is our show producer Tori. I see you made it through the New Year's festivities relatively unscathed.
Relatively, yeah. No, I stayed home.
Did you?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you can still get into trouble at home, too.
Yes, but not as much. Don't require bail.
Yeah. Well, it's cheaper, too.
Yes.
At home.
And I'm all about the cheaper.
Yeah. Well,
it gotta be nowadays. Government's taking more out of my weekly paycheck.
Yeah. Welcome to 2013. Year of the taxes. Just enjoy all those.
Well, I'd be staying at home a lot more.
Yeah. Well, that's where, the government would rather you stay home and just sit home, shut up, and vote the way you're supposed to.
Now, why you got to say that? Now I got to go out.
Just because they're saying.
God.
Yeah. Well, you can come out and protest in the streets when the stuff hits the fan.
Oh, I'll be the first there, dude.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Bring your pop pistol.
As angry as I've been this week.
I just let Tori do the show today.
Yeah. Anybody reads my Facebook.
Yeah. Get a good dose of that. All right, thank you for tuning in again this week, and a special thanks to all those people who have been telling others about this show. I get a lot of emails telling me how someone's sister or brother or friend told them about the show and how much they enjoyed listening to someone who's actually making sense on the radio. And now this person is listening too. What you hear on this show is reason and consistent ideals and principles, mainly the ones dealing with freedom and liberty. Coming off that Charlie Daniels song at the first of the show, I often get questions from people who, well, they're about to give up. They just don't see the point of fighting anymore. If you are one of those people, then listen up. This country, your neighbor, your friends, your family, your children's children, your children, all these people, they're pretty much counting on you to stand up for them, especially your children's children, because they are the ones government is ultimately screwing over. We are all having this big party, and your grandchildren are the ones that are going to be stuck with the bill. Right now, we're paying the price for the ambivalence that has been shown by previous generations before us. Those American citizens who sat back while our government grew and grew, who routinely voted in these same people over and over, never questioning whether what Congress was doing was moral or let alone constitutional. A lot of these people were paid off to stay quiet, to vote the way they were told. They were paid off with government money taken from one American citizen and given to another, all in the name of charity. A function, incidentally, that is not found in the Constitution, in case you're wondering. So how do we correct this imbalance? Well, how do you correct any imbalance? You take weight off one side and you put it on the other. In other words, you take power from the government side of the balance of the scale and put it back on the citizen side where it belongs and where it actually began. But lest you mistake what I'm saying, government should not be in balance with the people. Government is not equal to the citizen. The citizen should always have the most power. The scale should always tilt heavily to the side of the citizen. That which is created can never, ever be equal to the creator, or shouldn't be. The government was created by us, but now it is threatening to enslave us. And in many ways it already has. It is up to us to put a stop to it and shift the balance of power back towards the citizens of this nation. Have you ever asked yourself, where does all this end? When will the war on terror be over? When will the war on drugs be over? And if you cannot get a definite time for it to be over, then how can we know when we have won? And without having that definition, we're in a perpetual state of war. We've talked about this on this show many times, a perpetual state of having our freedoms and liberties restricted in the name of that war. And kind of to get off the subject just a little bit, have you ever noticed how the government's freedoms and liberties, they're never restricted? It is always ours. We are the ones having to give up freedom, never the government. In fact, the government is constantly acquiring more and more freedom to do what it wants, when it wants. And if we try to restrict it in any way, then we're terrorist and unpatriotic. Anyway, we're up on the first break here in the Patrick Riggins Show. We've got a lot to talk about. We'll try to restrain Tori throughout the whole show so he doesn't get too crazy. So he doesn't take a hatchet to the studio or something.
Run amok with a meat cleaver.
Yes. No, they only do that in China where they have registration for meat cleavers. This is the Patrick Riggins Show. We'll be back in a minute.
Fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. The Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now at 865-243-8255. That's 243-TALK. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome back. You are listening to the radio show that is Refined Greatness. Sure, there are other shows on the radio dial, but this show is like pure gold. Those other shows are the slag you skim off the top there. And after you do that, this is what's left. Pure 99.999%, the gold standard of radio shows. No, I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you the truth. Something you've expected to come from this show. The absolute truth, whether you want to admit it or not. Many do not. I was watching this week all this fiscal cliff wrangling in Washington, a cliff which we, by the way, went over a while back. I've covered that on a previous show. If you'd like to listen to it, you can go to our archive shows there on YouTube at youtube.com/Patrick Riggins Show. All this political theater that's been happening, it would be sad were it not so maddening. Just ask Tori. He's just bowling over here.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, it would be funny if it weren't screwing over our country and the middle class of this country. You do realize most of the money raised through taxes is from the middle class, right? Raising taxes on the rich, it isn't going to solve the problem. We don't have a tax problem. We have a spending problem. Yeah, but those rich have to pay their fair share. Is being 10% of the population but paying over 70% of the taxes fair? Most of those people will never be using government services, yet they're having to pay for them, so you don't have to. That's fair. If I go to a restaurant, I order a bunch of food, waste probably half of it by not eating it, and then stick you with the check. Is that fair? Let's say you work in an office. Someone in the office is going to go pick up lunch and is taking orders in the break room. Is it fair for you to demand whoever makes the most money pay for your lunch in addition to theirs? Is it fair for you to demand they pay for part of your lunch? Is it fair to demand they pay for any part of the cost of your lunch? No? Then why is it fair to demand the supposed rich in this country pay for your government handouts? A tax based on a percentage of your earnings is not the definition of fairness, despite what the liberals, some conservatives, and the government will tell you. When you buy a loaf of bread, it doesn't matter if you're a millionaire, a billionaire, or a person making $20,000 a year. You pay the same dollar amount. Tori's raising his hand.
I'm the latter.
That would be the millionaire part, right? But that's a fair tax. You're paying the same dollar amount. Telling someone they have to pay more simply because their income is higher, that's not fair. But in order to play the class warfare that is necessary to screw over the middle class, and that's what everyone in government is doing, lest you find yourself believing the hype out of Washington, in order to placate those people who aren't smart enough to know what these guys in government are up to, Congress acts like they're sticking it to those rich people. And anyway, yeah, that'll make your situation better, right? Congress and just about all governments in this country, from local up there to the federal, they're spending more than they take in. And to pay for it all, the Treasury is printing more and more dollars to cover that spending. The effect of all this spending in normal times is inflation. But the Fed has been acting to keep down inflation, but it cannot continue to do so forever. It just won't work. So what happens in the end will be this normal cycle of inflation. It will happen. There's no doubt about it. Why do you think we talk about $100 in, quote, today's dollars? It's because your $100 isn't really worth $100. It may be only worth, say, $80 now. But years ago, it might have been worth closer to $95. So if something is going down in value, what does that tell you about it? Do you want to put your money into something going down in value? Would you buy a stock that has been dropping consistently over the years? Of course not. But if the government is continually driving down the value of the money in your pocket, isn't that the same as a tax? You have less money than you did a year ago. Whether you give it to the government or it makes your dollars worth less, the effect is the same. You cannot buy as much as you could years ago. Let me put it this way. If you went to a doctor for an operation and he purposely screwed up the procedure on purpose, you could sue him or her. Like if he didn't do it on purpose, you can still sue him. But you definitely would not go back to them to have whatever they screwed up fixed. But when Congress purposely screws up our economy...
Can we sue them?
Yes. They screw over the citizens of this country. Well, you wish you could sue them, but you can't. But you certainly shouldn't vote them back into office. I mean, here they come. Hi, I'm the guy who screwed this up. I'm the doctor who botched your operation and did it on purpose, knowing full well what I was doing. Aren't you going to give me another chance to screw up the procedure again? Come on, you didn't die the first time.
You love me.
Yeah, you might not die this time. Just give me that one more chance. It sounds insane when we're talking about a medical procedure on your body. But the same thing is happening to our country. We continue to vote the same clowns in over and over. It is like we're all a bunch of masochists. It is so funny to listen to these...
Oh, it feels so good.
Yeah, it feels so good. Nothing like getting the pimp hand from our own employees in Congress. I love paying more taxes. I love it when you overspend. I love it when you constantly screw me and my fellow Americans. It's so funny to listen to these conservative commentators and pundits on television and radio talk about how they don't get why the Republicans allow themselves to be bullied in Congress, why they capitulate and sign on to bad legislation, why they give in to the president. It's pretty simple. It's because they believe in it. Democrats, Republicans, it doesn't matter. They all believe in governmental control of as much of this country as possible. Sure, they talk a good game, but when it comes to voting, it is always the same thing. More taxes, more spending, but no cuts. You can tell me you believe in lower taxes and limited government over and over, but when your actions, your votes don't reflect that, then at some point I have to stop believing what you're saying. Either that or I've become an ignorant robot blindly voting the way my particular party says to and actively contributing to the decline of this country. I don't know how much more evidence you want that the Republicans believe in what the Democrats are doing. They all believe the same thing. They vote practically the same. Oh, they'll oppose something here or there, but the overall trend is towards more government, less individual freedom, more taxes, more spending. Good Lord, how dense do you have to be not to be able to see that? If someone is robbing you, and that is what Congress is doing when they continue to spend money we don't have. Not only are they robbing you, though, they're robbing your children and your grandchildren and then their grandchildren until the government either runs out of money, that is, it devalues the money to practically nothing, or stops spending what they don't have and works through all this debt. And if someone is robbing you, you don't negotiate with them to try and convince them to steal less from you. You take a stand and say, no, you aren't going to steal at all. It's wrong. Even more so, it's illegal. You don't negotiate when someone is doing something harmful to you. Let's see, only stab me 4 times instead of 6. Only shoot me once instead of twice. That's just insanity. We're negotiating with the criminals when we should be locking them up, or at least demanding that they act correctly and not irresponsibly. If you're against all this, if you're upset with how Congress is acting, if you don't agree with this excessive spending, if you're tired of seeing the debt ceiling raised over and over, or heck, the president even wants to do away with the debt ceiling. He wants the government to be able to spend as much as it wants whenever it wants. If all of this is bothering you, then I have bad news. You don't have a voice in Washington. If you're against these insane wars, if you're against all this taxation, if you're against the crazy drug war, if you're against the intrusive role of government, and I would include local, state with the federal, if you're against the role those governments have taken in society, then you're out of luck when it comes to representation in Washington, or just about any government for that matter. This is where, personally, I think your best bet is to start backing the Libertarian Party, a party that is fighting to remove government from all of this. I don't believe what the two major parties have been telling everyone, that voting for a third-party candidate is throwing away your vote. It isn't. Besides, if we get enough people who are frustrated with Washington to vote our way, then we won't be dealing with the major parties too much longer. Real quick before we go to the break here, I'll tell you, I used to be a diehard Republican. I grew up with Ronald Reagan. I was there cheering on the intervention of our government in the affairs of other countries, in the CIA orchestrating the overthrowing of third world leaders, in the constant meddling and minding everyone else's business. Then one day, I began to realize that if government didn't respect other people's rights and liberties, what made me think it would continue to respect mine. And instead of listening to what the Republican Party said, I started watching what it was doing, how it was voting. That's when I realized it was up to the same old things the Democrats were doing. Only the Republicans were about a decade behind. Recently, however, I've noticed the Republicans have been playing catch-up, and now they're about equal in their lust for more power over the American people. Anyway, we're up on the break here at the half hour on the Patrick Riggin Show. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about New Year's resolutions and a couple other things we'll get to. We might ask Tori what his New Year's resolutions are. One of them involves staying out of handcuffs, I think.
No, that's just a daily struggle.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. Oh, see, I was going to go somewhere with, that was happening at home or...
No. Actually, I don't make New Year's resolutions. That's my resolution is to never make one.
Yeah,
well, I've been good so far.
This is Patrick Riggins. We'll be back in a minute.
Fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. The Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now at 865-243-8255. That's 243-TALK. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
You are listening to the Patrick Riggins Show. We are still the one. We're the one of the very few shows that is on radio or television.
We're a really, really big show.
Big shoe. We're the only ones consistently arguing for less government in all areas of society. Arguing for a truly limited federal government that abides by the Constitution. We even argue for a limited state government that abides by their respective state constitutions. I really can't think of any of them that really do either, but but I will be here on the Patrick Riggins Show, where we fight for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution, as Shine says at the first of this show every announcement, pretty much. You know, sometimes it's a lonely fight. Sometimes it's a hard fight. But it is always a worthy fight and an honorable fight. Now, I have this radio show, and we'll lead the way if we have to, working to convert all of the brainwashed people out there in Never Never Land to the idea of a government bound by the Constitution and answerable to all the people, not corporate donors, not to the minority that screams out enough, but to everyone. Of course, this will involve you listening to this show. More importantly, buying from our sponsors and letting them know you're buying from me based on hearing them run ads on this show. It will involve you getting others to listen, talking to them about what you hear, teaching them to think with a critical mind, not a sponge-like mind that just soaks up everything around it, regardless of whether it is good or not, truth or not, or logical or not. One thing I would like for you to consider is, do you question why we make certain things illegal in this country? Making something illegal is the same as attempting to deprive you of that thing or from engaging in that behavior. Ultimately, the government depriving you of things is saying it doesn't trust you to have self-control. Making drugs illegal. The government doesn't trust you to have self-control over your life, over whether you're going to use decisions to use drugs or not. And since you cannot be trusted to make that correct decision, it makes it for you. You can't have a certain type of gun because you cannot be trusted to not go crazy with it. That, and the government doesn't want an armed population that can defend itself against tyranny. Oh, why do we have speed limits? Government doesn't trust you to drive safely. You won't drive within your limits. You're going to go crazy and endanger everyone else on the road. Never mind, you could do that right now. Nothing is really stopping you. But you aren't going to drive like the government says you should. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a speed limit. It'd be a speed advisory. This all falls under the fact that you cannot take care of yourself. This is the same governmental control that we laugh and joke about when talking about how these governments in Muslim countries make women cover themselves so the men won't be tempted to have impure thoughts. That's not the woman's fault. It's the man's. But the women are the ones having to pay for it. We laugh about all that, but our government does the same thing to us in just about every aspect of our life. We have to all be inconvenienced because the government doesn't trust that everyone is going to exercise self-control in certain aspects of their lives. We're all human. Mistakes are going to happen. Accidents are going to happen. This is Earth. It isn't heaven. If you want perfect, you're in the wrong place. We have too many... Oh, Tori looked like he was jumping up to throw something in there. Too many people in America today, they want to be the policeman. They want to police someone else's life. What they're doing. Most major religions warn humans about this, about gossiping, about being nosy or a busybody. Even Jesus said, don't worry about the speck in your brother's eye until you get the board out of your own. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but the idea is to work on your life. Worry about your life. When you get it cleaned up and perfect, then you can worry about someone else's. Here's a hint, though. You won't ever be perfect, and neither will your life. So you probably won't ever get the chance to worry about someone else's life. Just look at what people do on the road. This is one of my pet peeves, of course. People are outright rude on the road. They intentionally get in someone's way. They'll cut others off on purpose. They're purposely trying to be an impediment in another person's life. Now, why is that? The interesting thing is these same people get all bent out of shape if that same rudeness is returned to them. Or even worse, if they're trying to cut you off, you make it around them. They're trying to be in your way and you get around them, then they'll start honking and blinking their lights and flipping you off, all because you are no longer being bound by their actions. Somehow you did something. Like, I'm walking along a trail in the woods and come to a rock. If I step over it, the rock flips me off. But if I trip over it, the rock is happy. What kind of psychosis is that? The same idea just permeates our society. I don't have to respect you. I don't have to be nice to you, but you dang sure you better respect me and be nice to me, no matter what behavior I'm exhibiting. I don't want to work. I don't want to earn money. I don't want to be responsible. But don't you dare question the validity of the concept that you have to support me, but I don't have to support you. If you question that logic, you're a racist. Even though all races are hooked on the government dole, all colors of people are taking money from the government, which means you and me. Since government only has the money it takes from someone else, either through direct taxation or devaluing the dollar through the excessive printing of them. Since we just came off the new year, you should make some resolutions for 2013, not like those weight loss resolutions that you're breaking this week. Unlike those, you need to stick to these. Resolution number 1, and it's kind of self-serving, but get someone beside yourself to listen to this radio show. Just tell someone once a month to tune in and listen to what's being said here. That will go a long way to helping make sure we can turn things around in this country. It's a numbers game. 1 or 2 people wanting to make things better isn't enough. But start talking to the people you know. Start talking to them about what is happening to this country. You don't have to preach to them. That's my job on this radio show. Yeah. No, but you don't have to preach to them. Just explain how freedom and liberty is something every person yearns for or should be yearning for. In talking to people, you're going to find a lot of people, and I would go so far as to say most people, they're scared of freedom. They're used to having government provide this societal safety net. All you need to do is to explain to them that society took care of everyone before government decided that it was its job to do. Look at how churches and other civic organizations used to flourish in this country. Just about everyone was a member of a church, or if they didn't believe in Christianity or didn't want to attend church, they were involved with some local civic group. They were helping others in their community that needed help. That's what Americans have always done, helped each other. But when the government started butting in, then people started butting out. Look at these churches and civic groups now. They're withering on the vine for lack of participation. Real quick before we go to the break, another resolution I would do is that stay out of other people's business. Let other people do their thing and you do yours. That's not to say you shouldn't help others through private charity if they need it. But we should take care of the less fortunate of our society. Notice I said less fortunate, not the lazy. And private charity is one of the best ways to do that. Government, when we started down that road, it's just like the classic phrase, government screws up everything they put their hands into. So a good resolution is just allow others to do what they want to do and you do what you want to do. And what I want to do right now is go to a break. How's that for a segue, Tori?
Beautiful.
Beautiful. We'll go to a break and we'll come back and I'll have, let's see, I may have resolution number 3 and we'll wrap all this up on the show this week. How's that sound, Tori?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. This is Patrick Riggins with The Patrick Riggins Show.
By the pale afternoon.
Fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. The Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now at 865-243-8255. That's 243-TALK. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome back to the Patrick Riggins Show.
It's good to be back.
Yeah. Had a couple little swigs of something during the break. Starting this last segment with some Alice in Chains there. For the last part of this show, I'll hit this last resolution I wanted to talk about, and it's one that is kind of hard for a lot of people. But it's get off the government dole. If you're getting a government check, find a way to make money where you don't have to take that check. You'll feel 100 times better knowing you aren't contributing to the problems of this country. And I know it's hard, and even if you've paid into the system, I know a lot of people feel this way. I have bad news for you. The government has lost your money. It's lost my money. Deep down, you know this to be a fact. You just keep pushing it down and making excuses for taking the check, or getting free or reduced medical care, or some other government reimbursement. Here's the hard truth, and that's what you'll get on this show. If you're taking money from the government, you know we don't have the money to give you. The government has squandered away all of it. Mine too. It isn't like the government has a big stack of money they have squirreled away just for you and me. The check you're getting is coming directly from someone else's pocket, either your neighbor's or your children's. You know that. You know your money is gone, yet you still want yours. And you don't care if the government has to take it from another citizen and give it to you. You put money in, you want money out. Even if it's stolen money, you don't care. If that is your attitude, and yet you complain about others living off the government, then frankly, you're a hypocrite. You might not want to hear that, and if you don't, I suggest you listen to one of the other little so-called conservative radio shows that preach that you are the one that is right and everyone else is wrong. Nothing you are doing is wrong. But those other people taking money from government, they're just lazy. They're good for nothing. But there isn't anything wrong with you doing it, because you paid in. You deserve to get it all back, plus interest. And it doesn't matter whether it is wrecking the country or not. I want mine. Yes, it is hard to swallow that kind of truth. But if you're a regular listener to this show, you know it to be true. And you are mature enough to understand the situation we are in, the problems our country is going to have to tackle. Sure, your little check doesn't amount to a hill of beans in comparison to the magnitude of the debt and spending of this government. But you must remember you need to live by your principles no matter what everyone else is doing. Now, I know this show has been a little preachy, but it's for a good purpose. It's to make you think. Most of you regular listeners are already thinkers. You think critically. You evaluate what is being told to you with a critical mind. Now, you new listeners, I hope you're working to develop this same skill and apply it throughout your entire life, not just in politics. Each week, I'm here every Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m., working to bring you around to the idea of individual freedom and liberty. Most people would agree that we have lost freedoms, and most people would agree that we need to get them back. But most people would not agree that everyone else should have freedom as well, and that's where the problem lies. What trips a lot of people up is other people's freedom. You want all this freedom for yourself, but you don't want other people or think they need to have that same freedom, either because you don't trust them, or you don't think they deserve it, or whatever the reason may be. The government feels the same way. It wants to keep all of its freedom to act against the citizens without abiding by the citizens' superior claim to that same freedom of action. The citizen's claim is superior because the citizen grants the government freedom to do certain things, not the other way around. The citizens of this country, the people, we're the ones in charge. The government is meant to serve us, not us serve the government. Look at this recent gun issue. If anyone should be restricting guns or ammunition or anything else, or restricting any actions, it should be us restricting government. We are the owners of this country. We have the freedoms to start with. Government wasn't born with natural human rights like we are. Government is only granted the ability to do the things we allow it to do. And these things are defined in the Constitution. If it isn't in the Constitution, then we shouldn't be doing it. Yes, it's really that simple. Let me give you a quick example, and this will help you with a little self-evaluation. Let's say I own a business and have a bunch of employees. If they want to become a union of employees, then that is their right to freely associate with one another. But if they're going to have the freedom to do that, then they must also acknowledge I have the freedom to fire them and hire others who aren't unionized if I wish. Again, therein lies the problem for most people. Other people's freedom. I've mentioned it on this show many times before. Everyone has the same freedom. If you're free to unionize, then the owners are free to fire you and hire others. Freedom works both ways, or it isn't freedom. Unions want all the freedoms to bargain and try to get the best deal for their workers, but then want to restrict the right of the owners to be able to fire workers if they want. They don't need a reason. It's their business. Do I need a reason to kick you out of my house if I want to? No, I don't. It works the same at your job. If freedom was really present in this country, that is. But people don't want to hear that. They want restrictions on employers. They want the government stepping in and sticking their nose into private contracts. But come and try to take my gun. Well, no, you can't do that. I want freedom only where I want it. Now, if you find yourself thinking this way, then I'm sorry, but you're no better than the self-serving representatives and bureaucrats in government. You don't want government in your life, but you certainly don't want, but you certainly want to use government to coerce or even force the behavior you want out of other people. This is the problem we have to overcome in this country, and really enough of us need to do that in order to get our people elected. Yes, I said our people, because their people are not going to pull this country out of the tailspin we are currently in. And I hope you continue to join me throughout this whole year, and Tori too.
I'll be joining you throughout the year.
Yeah, no, they're joining us.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Continue. I just automatically assumed you'd be here, Tori. Was that an erroneous assumption?
No, I'll be here.
Is there something I should know?
No.
Oh, you're not going to jail, are you? You had a resolution against that, right?
Yes. Yes, I had a resolution. No, I'm not going to jail. No, I actually don't get in trouble, so I'm a good boy.
Tori's a very good boy. Yes, he is. He stays out of trouble. Anyway, we're coming up on the end of the show here. If you'd like more information about this show, you can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/Patrick Riggins Show. And if you need to know how to spell Riggins, it's R-I-G-G-I-N-S, Patrick Riggins Show all together. And if you want to watch us on Twitter, we're at @Patrick Riggins. And we're also on YouTube at youtube.com/Patrick Riggins Show. And if you want to send an email and scream at me, you can send it to Patrick. Yes, Patrick Riggins Show at gmail.com. Or if you'd rather write your missives down there and scream at me, you can send a letter to WNOX here on Kingston Pike.
Just the important part is just scream at him.
Just scream, yeah. Join me next Sunday afternoon where once again we'll talk about freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. This is Patrick Riggins, and we'll see you next Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. Have a great week.
Join us again next week for a solid dose of truth on the Patrick Riggins Show. Every Sunday from 2 to 3 p.m. Be there.